just if you wouldn't mind, just tell us a bit about your own background, your own family background. Just where you were born, where your parents came from, all that kind of stuff. So,
I'll leave that to you, Phyllis. You have a good memory.
Well, my father came from Bannow, County Wexford, but his mother died when he was a month old, and his father was torpedoed in the First World War. So he came to live, when he was old enough to go to work, he came to live in Waterford with his aunt. And my mother came from Emma's Place. So they got married.
Oh, what was her name and his name?
Bill Stafford, and she was Elsie Warren.
Warren.
Okay. So they went to live in Dominic Place first, and then we moved out the Ursuline Road. And
was that a council house, or did they buy a house?
Oh no, there were council houses.
Okay.
There were council houses.
And then how many was in your family then?
3 girls and a boy, and 2 girls died as babies.
So there would have been 5 girls.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you said your dad came from Wexford and your mother was from Waterford, like, would you have ever gone back to see relatives and cousins and all that kind of stuff? Or?
In late years, but there was nobody belonged to my father in County Wexford then, but we used to go down, they're all buried in Bannistrand. We used to go down to visit the grave down there.
Okay. And when you said the First World War was in
the Navy.
Merchant Seaman?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they were torpedoed.
Okay. And okay, so then in Waterford, then your mother's family, did you have relatives here in Waterford that you knew of? Or?
Yeah, my grandfather came to Waterford as foreman in Hearn's cabinet factory. Oh. They used to make furniture for churches and schools all over the country, and that's how he came to Waterford.
And was he a carpenter?
He was a cabinet maker.
Okay.
And he was the foreman cabinet maker.
Oh, nice.
That's how he came to Waterford, to work there in Hearn's cabinet factory.
Yeah.
That's well gone now.
And they were famous, Hearns were famous.
Oh, they were, yeah.
They supplied all the churches in Ireland, didn't they?
Yeah.
Confession boxes and all the pews and all that.
Yeah, he died at 47 with kidney failure, but there was people from all over Ireland, schools and churches, contributed money when he died, because I suppose there was no pensions then, and all his children were young, like.
And then when you were born, just before we kind of leave that generation, do you know the way in the old days people would have all sorts of kind of superstitions and beliefs and all that kind of stuff, which are not there now?
No.
Do you remember any of those ones? Like you know the way people have favourite saints, or they might have. Is any old Wexford stuff that came up with your father?
Oh well, my father, years after we went down to Wexford, and he hadn't seen this man since he was a child. And we went to a funeral, and this man was at the funeral, and he stood behind him and he said, "Did you frighten any old ones today?" They used to put a sheet over their heads and stand up on the walls outside the church at night in the winter when the people would be coming home from the devotions.
Give them a scare.
Yeah, to frighten them. But what I didn't tell you was, when I was 10 and my brother was 8, my grandmother brought us downtown on Christmas Eve, and there's a shop in Patrick Street opposite where the shoe centre is now, a meat shop, and she went into the meat shop and left us sitting on the window outside. And there was a lorry parked up at Lodge, as it was then, and the fellow went back into the shop and left the handbrake off, and the lorry came down the hill, and my grandmother saw it when she was in the shop. We didn't notice it, and she ran out and shoved the two of us out of the way, and the lorry turned in and put her through the shop window, and the whole building came down on top of her.
Was she killed?
She was killed. She died 2 days after.
So she saved your life?
She shoved the two of us out of the way.
Oh my God.
But,
and that was your granny from Waterford?
yeah,
Yeah. On Christmas Eve.
on a Christmas
my
Eve,
God.
yeah.
That's an awful story.
Oh, it was terrible, yeah, terrible.
But I mean, what a fantastic woman to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, she was only in her 50s, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was 57.
Oh my God. And and so then when you were small then, what school did you go to? What did you...
The presentation.
Okay.
But I went to the Irisland.
Yeah, I'm coming to you in a second because you must be an afterthought in the family.
She's 14 years younger than me.
Was it like two different families?
Well, it's just my father went away during the war to
Okay.
work,
Okay.
and that's how there's such a big gap.
The Second World War came in between.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really funny. And so you were in the presentation.
Yeah,
Okay. And where was the presentation then? Was that
up in Slieve Keel.
same place?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That was a fair trek then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, it was from Dominic's Place now,
Oh,
remember?
sorry.
Yeah.
Dominic's
Oh,
Place.
yeah. Yeah.
This is before you moved
Yeah.
to Pierce Park.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was your memory of Waterford at that time?
Well, I mean, people were poor, I suppose,
Yeah.
you know. And then during the war, like, so many fathers had to go away, like.
So everybody went to England to work.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
they had to, sure, you know. There was no work here. My father was a plumber, but there was no work in the buildings at all, like, during the war.
So would they go via the Great Western? Is that where they went?
Yeah, now first a group of them went to Belfast
Oh,
to work, but they got such a bad time, you know, being Catholics, then working in the shipyards.
all right.
They had to come home, so then they went to England. So he worked
And
in
then
England.
when he came back after the war, was that when he moved to Pierce Park?
Shortly after that,
Okay.
because my aunt's husband had TB and she was living out there. Those houses were only built and she got a house there, and my mother wanted to live near her, like, you know. So that's how we moved out there then.
And did your mother then look after your aunt?
Well, she looked after the children when my aunt went to work. Her husband died and she was only 29, like. So my mother looked after the children for her, so she could go to work.
So say that again, did the man die?
Yeah, Jerry
The
died.
husband
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you see, we were living next door to the first glass factory.
Okay.
So there was a lot of women got work there.
All right. And then you came along then around that time?
I was 2 when we moved to Pierce Park,
Okay.
or Rustling Road as it was then.
Yeah, yeah.
I was 2. And then when Jerry died, my uncle, I was 3 then. But Josie went to work then, so Mammy took them every morning. It was about 7:45, was it?
Yeah.
And they stayed until Josie finished work.
And where did she work?
She worked in the
Glass
glass
factory.
next
Oh,
door.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that was handy enough then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We used to go in and play, and I can remember the men putting us into the barrels, what would they call them, the skips or whatever, rolling us up and down. And we used to play with the broken glass, which now, health and safety, would be a definite no-no.
Yeah, yeah.
We used to make these big altars and everything out of the broken glass.
And that was the very early stages of Waterford Glass.
Oh yeah.
That was when
yeah.
they were just being trained.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Mary Cavill used to train them with the jam jars. They'd bring in jam jars and he'd be teaching to do the cutting on the jam jars.
And did you know him?
Yes.
And what was he like as a man?
Oh, he was a gentleman.
And he was the kind of main brain behind the whole thing, was he?
Oh, he was fantastic, yeah.
And he was from the Czech Republic, was he?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have his book there.
Okay. And then they trained the local lads, and then eventually they moved to Johnstown, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. And how many years ago were they there in that area before they moved? Do you know, roughly?
Can't remember. Before they moved out to...
Before they moved to Johnstown.
Johnstown. I don't know enough of us. Before we went away, anyway, they had moved, hadn't they?
Yeah.
So it was only a few years they were there?
Yeah.
Okay.
You see, the factory in Ballytruckle was small, and for the furnace man, it was a desperate job there. But they were there a few years, like, you know.
Yeah. And so how many years older are you two?
14.
You're 14?
I'm 14 years older than
okay.
Bernie.
And then you met a guy then. Tell us that, because that's an interesting story as well.
Oh yeah, I met him at a dance in the Olympia. One of the girls was with me, was working in the glass factory, and she said, I must introduce you to this fella from Dublin. So that's how I met him. And we got married. After about 2 years, we got married.
So what age were you?
At 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he had come down to Waterford to work in the glass factory.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said he was a fitter, was he?
Yeah, he was the foreman fitter when he came back, yeah.
Okay. And the way then, because this is kind of complicated, because then your family then moved over to England. So tell us that story, because that's kind of interesting as well.
Well, Phyllis was married, and my brother was married, and my other sister were married. So my father went to work in London, and my mother decided to move over and brought me with her. And my father was working in the London Zoo, he was maintenance. And we went to live in a flat. There weren't apartments then, there were flats. A basement flat. And Mammy worked as a housekeeper then. He was a cancer professor, Mr. Gibbs. She looked after the children. Then she eventually went to work in the zoo as a caterer. And I used to work there weekends then when I was young.
Did you like the zoo?
I loved the zoo, but I hated London.
Why?
Because I went from such a small place, and Phyllis was, like, we were the last house in Ursline Road then, number 46, so we didn't even have to walk around the road. We could just walk down the backs. None of the backs were cordoned off, so we'd walk from the house over to Phyllis's. And like, Phyllis had 4 children then, so they were really like my brothers and sisters, and I was taken away from all them. So as soon as I was 18, I came back and moved in with Phyllis.
So in a way, Phyllis is like nearly like your mum.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Phyllis had 6 children then. And she went on and had another one after I got married, but I lived with Phyllis and Sean and the 6 children.
And did your mum and dad stay on in England then?
Yes. They stayed on until my father retired, 65.
That's gas. And did they ever come back?
Oh, they did. They came back the day after my father retired, they came back. My mother loved London, but my father didn't.
Oh, right.
She loved it and hated coming home. So
That's gas. And when they came back then, where did they eventually live then?
they eventually went to live down, would you remember Harry Donnelly's butcher shop down in Ballytruckle?
Yes.
Remember Garvey's pub,
Yeah.
above Garvey's pub, a small house there they lived.
Okay.
Then they were knocked and they were given a house opposite Centra in Start of John's Park. They lived opposite there then.
Okay. And then, what's your memory, because I mean, this was early St. John's Park. What was your memory of that whole time, of the community out there? Because there was no real community as such at the start.
Well, when I went, moved out there, there was only about 30 houses built council houses. Like, I went to live in one of the glass factory houses, but there was only about 30 houses built then. That was 62 years ago. But the glass factory houses were built a few years before that. They were built originally for the Germans and the Italians.
Yeah. And he moved into one of those houses?
Because when my husband came from Dublin, he was promised that he'd get a house.
Okay.
Now, we were only renting them then, but later on we were able to buy him for 2,000.
Was he kind of like, was he lured to Waterford because he was highly sought after, or did he just come down because of a job? Or?
Well, I suppose, I don't know, I suppose he had, maybe it would be the same kind of machinery that they had in the glass bottle company in
Which
Dublin.
is why he worked in Dublin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so he knew his way around
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're talking about the community.
Yeah.
Phyllis had fantastic neighbours living opposite now, didn't you? In the council houses, they were the best neighbours ever.
But I found the Germans, I found the Germans hard to live amongst. They were always run down the Irish.
Okay, so there was I suppose I'm interested in this because, like, another way nowadays people be talking about all the immigrants that come into Ireland nowadays, right? But this is a very old story, right? This is a story that goes back 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
When the Germans and the Czechs and the Italians came over here.
I found the Italians much nicer.
Warmer.
Yes.
Okay.
The Germans, as I said, were always saying the Irish were lazy and things like that.
And we probably were.
But the
In
Germans,
comparison.
I must say, the Germans were fantastic workers.
And great housekeepers.
Oh yeah, they were fantastic workers.
Yeah.
And sure, like, they started off the factory, you know.
And then just talk about the community, because you're saying that you had great neighbours, but I mean, how did the community get going? Because here you had a situation where people would come from all over the place. They were coming from the countryside, they were coming from Waterford,
Yeah.
they were coming in. How did the whole community get going?
Well, the people in Johns Park were always lovely people to help each other. You know, I had 7 children, and I had 2 neighbours that lived across the road, Mrs. O'Connor and Mrs. Kelly, and they were always there to help me, especially when my mother went to England. And as I said, everyone like helped each other, you know.
Yeah.
And I think more so, I can remember in Phyllis's, after I got married, Mrs. O'Connor had come over and Mrs. Kelly, and we'd all sit out in the back garden. We think the summers were better, I don't know whether they were or not. But we'd all sit out there and all the children would play around, and it was a great neighbourhood.
Yeah.
I moved to Lisduggan. Well, I was in Ballytruckle when I first got married. Then we moved to Lisduggan. I absolutely couldn't wait to come back to this side of the town.
Okay.
And I walked out to Phyllis's every day with the children in the pram and walked out.
Well, I have to say that the children on the German road had a great time, because there was a field at the back of our houses. There's houses built there now, but there was a field between the back of our houses and Kilcone, and the children the whole summer would play out there.
It's like a playground there.
You know, they had a great time.
And then there was Father Pat's field when we used to go up on picnics. Yeah.
My lads were always into the soccer. Bill especially played for Johnville, but they loved the soccer.
So I suppose those kind of things where people were starting off like soccer clubs or GA clubs or different things, they all helped to form a community, I suppose.
And the school, Scoil Con, was a great school. You know, they all seemed to do well out of it, you know. The brothers were great. Like.
Okay. And then at the start there was no church out there, was it? And then
Oh no, only the little church up on the Ursuline Road. That was there for years, sure, before they built the church in the Folly.
okay.
No, they had a little church.
It was like a wooden
Yeah,
structure, wasn't it?
little
Yeah.
church.
It was
Was that
on the
kind of
grounds of the
opposite-
convent, dead opposite where we
were
lived.
living.
In,
Okay.
in,
Where
in
we
Ursuline
lived,
Road,
yeah.
yeah.
And you went to the Ursuline.
Yes.
And you know the whole thing about there was St. Anne's and then the Ursuline.
Oh yeah.
And the borders.
And what was that like?
Desperate.
Yeah, just tell us what that was like. 'Cause it sounds odd.
Oh, it was very odd. And Mother Margaret rang my mother to at that time we had a phone because my father worked for himself, that I was the only one at home, and she couldn't understand why that I wasn't going to St. Anne's, which was a fee-paying school, like, you know. But the borders, we actually could not turn our back on the borders. If we walked up to the convent for some reason, for a message or something, and you met a boarder, you had to walk down with your face towards them. You couldn't turn your back on the borders.
Why?
Because it just wasn't that we were the plebs, I suppose, I don't know. But we had to
That was the
walk.
rule.
That was the rule. We had to walk with facing the borders.
And did the borders, did they go to school in St. Anne's?
No, they had their own. Well, I'm not sure whether they actually had classes in St. Anne's now. They probably did.
So it's like 3 different
We were
systems.
totally weren't allowed to mix with St. Anne's or the borders.
So it's like 3 different systems
Yeah.
within
Yeah.
one school.
And I had friends in St. Anne's, the Shanahans across the road, which we all played together at home, you know, when we were in there. But we weren't allowed to mix during school times. It was awful.
I'll tell you one.
Did it make you feel like as if you were...
Inferior.
Yeah.
What did you?
Okay.
I'll tell you one instance about. Now I think when Marion, St. Anne's wasn't there anymore, but Marion, I think she might have been in 6th class, but there was an award that the teachers gave for the best behaved pupil, I think it was, and your man Shipsy from Dunmore donated a beautiful ring, and my daughter Marion got it, and all the teachers voted for her to get this ring, and she was presented with it the day the sports was on. Now St. Anne's was gone at this time, but the nuns were still much the same, like. But anyway, on the following week, on the Munster Express, all the people that won prizes on Sports Day were on the Munster Express, but not one word about my daughter, that the teachers had voted for her to get this ring. And I thought that was terrible.
So again, it was kind of snobbery.
Yes.
So the nuns
Yes.
in the Ursuline were terrible snobs. And they had absolutely no pity or mercy on any children that maybe wouldn't have had their breakfast or anything, you know.
But yeah, I mean, yet all the young people all the girls in St. John's Park would have gone to the Ursuline. And what did the nuns not kind of absorb that or change in any way?
No.
One teacher made a statement one day that you know what the mothers are like in John's Park. They'd have the rollers in their hair if you knocked at the door.
So it was like as if they weren't properly...
Yes.
They weren't good enough. They weren't good
Yeah.
enough. Well, I mean, our father was totally anti-church, like, you know, for a man of his years, wasn't he? A man of his
Oh, he
time.
was, yeah.
He didn't go to church, chapel or meeting. Totally had no time. But one of his great friends was Father Hopkins. And Father Hopkins used to come up to the house to him. But my father had absolutely no time for the nuns. And my cousin Anne told that her father had died. We were in the class together, and she had forgotten to ask for sixpence, and she'd always get it off my father. But anyway, she went home in tears at lunchtime. My father was working on the Johns Park house. So we were in the class and big knock at the door, my father in his big muddy boots. And he just came in to Mother Immaculate. We were all terrified of him. And he just said, I believe Anne forgot this, he said. And he flicked the sixpence. He said, you need it more than we do. Don't you ever make an example of her again. And he just walked out. Which was like it never happened. It was never mentioned when he was gone.
And did the nun give her, was there a different treatment afterwards?
No.
Okay.
No. Absolutely. But my father was totally anti-establishment, really.
Okay.
You know, it was all for us. And
yeah, I suppose the church is very, very powerful at that stage, weren't it?
yeah.
But today now the Ursuline would be a different school
Oh, I know.
altogether.
I know. This is history we're talking
Yeah,
Yes,
it'd be
yeah.
a much different
Absolutely.
atmosphere now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure it's mostly lay people anyway working there. I don't think there's any.
I don't think there are any nuns
No,
now.
there's not. No.
There was one lovely nun, Mother Bertman's. She was absolutely lovely. She only died there a couple of years ago. She was lovely and very kind.
No, it's all very changed. And we're just talking about different times. You know.
Yes, yeah.
But you have to think too, some of those nuns went into the convent at a very young age, like, you know. And I'd say a lot of them weren't happy.
Yeah, and hadn't experienced life. I suppose.
No, they hadn't.
And had no choice, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, that they had to go in.
Oh, it's kind of a weird setup. Anyway.
No.
And so anyway, just tell me any more about John's Park, because I know like that time it was kind of like, what about the whole thing about it was kind of, we say for the people in the rest of Waterford, sometimes they had a very rough
Idea.
reputation about.
Can I stand up?
Go on, yeah,
I'll
walk
get
away.
rid of that.
Well, now, I wouldn't leave any of my sons go to Mount Zion because they used to call them the Johnnies, or from Johnnyland, when they go to Mount Zion. And I felt the teachers looked down on them.
Okay.
So I sent mine to Del Sal
Me too.
because of that. And even I know in one shop, this woman was on the phone. Somebody was asking her about a job, and she said, as long as you're not from John's Park, I'll interview you. But it had a bad name like that.
And did you think it was deserved or not deserved?
Well, sure, I'd say there was a very small percentage that were troublemakers.
Yes.
You know,
In any communities.
yeah.
And you probably later on you saw Larchfield, Lisduggan, and then Ballycraig, and
yeah.
Same thing. Yeah.
I mean, I lived on the German road for 50 years and I just loved it, always. But just when my husband died, I didn't want to be living on my own. Like, that's how I came into here.
Okay.
Well, I loved John's Park.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to get a house there, but we didn't get a corporation house there, but we moved to the Folly then when they became. But I loved John's Park.
Okay.
And I think the only reason it had a bad name, it's just so many people together. And there might have been, as Phyllis said, the very odd few.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah.
mud sticks kind of thing then. But I found the people lovely there, and I still love John's Park.
And it's interesting because I wouldn't even be aware. It's only from talking to people the last few days, and like people came from Wexford, and it wasn't just people from Waterford City. It was a big mix of people.
Yeah,
That's
Peg is from
true,
Wexford,
yeah.
sure, yeah, and she
Yeah.
loves John's Park.
Do you know what I mean? Because you'd see it as kind of a part of Waterford, but actually there was a lot of people came into it
Yeah, but
from outside.
I'll tell you, I think though there won't be big housing estates built like that again.
Yeah.
No, that's the problem, I think. So many people together, like.
It was a great community though for the soccer now, wasn't it?
Oh,
And
yeah.
the Gaelic, and
Yeah.
they were always organising things for the children.
And there was a great basketball team in Scoil-Arcone. Derek used to play on the basketball team. And for years after then, all them chaps out of that class used to play basketball.
And sorry, I want to go back. You know, back when you were small,
Yeah.
What kind of things where would you go for fun or entertainment or that? Would you go into town? Where would you go?
Oh no, we play on the road,
Just playing the road, yeah.
play rounders and things like that, and skipping. But
Do you remember any of the old rhymes?
I'm 84 years of age.
Yeah, but you're surprised what people can remember now.
But we used to go for picnics up on the knock.
Okay.
Homemade lemonade and Marietta biscuits we used to bring for the picnic. But we used to really, but the weather years ago was much better. You know, the summers.
Yeah,
When you'd be walking in the Corpus Christi procession, the tar would be melting on the roads, like, and you'd be dying to get up to Dial Street. All the people used to have out buckets of water and cups for you to have a drink, like, to be so hot.
And what time of year was that, Corpus Christi?
In June,
Cool.
yeah.
Do you not know, you'd be too young to remember the processions? I remember
I
them.
remember all the processions, but I don't remember.
But I can't remember where it used to start, but it finished on Ballybricken.
Okay.
Now they're going to resurrect that now, aren't they, again?
Are
The
they?
Corpus
Yeah.
Christi,
But
yeah.
I do remember by the time you'd get to Dial Street, you'd be so hot that you'd be dying to get these drink of water, like, and all the houses would have out buckets of water for you to drink.
And they'd have the altars.
Yeah.
All their windows were dressed with
Oh, would
altars.
you ever, I mean, I know probably your son might be interested, but would you ever go up to Kilcone or anything like that during the big soccer days and all that?
Oh, well, when before I was married, we'd have to have our dinner at 12:30 on Sunday, because my mother and father, I'd be going up to Kilcone at about 1:30 for the soccer matches. There used to be some crowd going to those matches.
It's huge.
And John Boyce had come in then for
Yeah,
his tea on the
John
way down.
Boyce used to play for Waterford, and his family were from Wexford, and they'd all come into our house for their tea after the match.
Cool.
Yeah.
And do you remember the fair? Was it a fair, Phyllis, they used to have in Kilcone? A
Yeah.
Farmer's Day, was it?
No, it wasn't a farmer's day. It was like a fair.
Like a gymkhana kind of
No.
But they used to have all tractors there
and all
things
kinds
once
of
a year.
stalls.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can remember the
Like a show. Like the show.
Yeah,
day.
the show it was.
Yes.
Yeah, the show.
Yeah.
the hundreds of people coming up to that, and we'd be at the gate.
Oh, would that be a farmer's thing, like?
Not
That area,
really,
was
no.
it?
I can remember tractors being there now and bales of hay and that, but as Phyllis said, there was loads of stalls, every
Yeah.
kind of stall there.
Okay.
But who organised it or where it came from, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a long time since they
Yeah, that was a great day. Now, I was very young, and I can remember my father had me up on the gate and watching everybody going up.
Yeah.
And what about, is there any other old characters from out that way that you can remember that were long gone now? That,
Well, I remember when we were going to the Iceland, there was a little lane, no, that's all gone now, at the end of the folly. You used to run to the little lane. And then, do you remember the farmyard? Phyllis, at the end?
Yeah.
Mrs. McSweeney, her husband used to work for the convent, if you like. He's probably a caretaker or something. But we used to go down to look at the chickens. And there was a big iron gate, and Mrs. McSweeney had come out and throw buckets of water on us for being at the chickens.
and what about St. Otterns? Did you ever, like, do you remember the siren going off there or anything like that? Or
When the patients had come down the backs.
would you be frightened of it, or would you be, no?
But I can tell you, I can remember getting in over the wall of a Christmas night to a dance in St. Otterns. I have to laugh when I think of it. A few of us went up and we had no tickets to get in. They used to have dances, and some of the patients would be at the dances. But we had no tickets, but we got over the wall and jumped into these bushes. We didn't know where we were going, but there used to be great dances up there.
Okay. And was it for the patients?
Well, yes, and if the patients asked you to dance, you'd have to dance with them, like. But it was the fellas that used to be there, we were going, like.
And it was a fine hall, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It was a
yeah.
really beautiful
But
hall.
every Christmas night they used to have a dance up there.
Okay. And a lot of the women worked up there too, didn't they?
A lot of the women from John's Park, yeah, worked up there.
There's a few women now in the active retirement worked there.
Mm.
That'll be able to.
And then what other jobs were in the area? Like, I mean, I
Well,
suppose later
I
on was-
worked in a grocery shop in town, Hughes's. It's where Dunn's, you know, in Michael Street is. That's where it was.
All right. And what kind of job was that?
A grocery shop.
Okay, just serving and all that.
Yeah,
kind of stuff. Okay.
yeah.
And he worked hard there, enough, wasn't it?
And before that, I worked in a shop on the Yellow Road. It was a small shop, but they used to sell everything. And they used to sell milk as well, loose milk, like, you know.
It's like a dairy.
Well, no, there was a dairy further up. There was a dairy owned by the same people. But this was a shop at the end of Newport Lane there, on the Yellow Road. It's closed now, there's no shop there. But all the people from the lanes used to come in. We'd open at 8 o'clock in the morning and they'd buy a half pint of milk, maybe an ounce of tea, quarter of sugar and 2 ounces of butter. And they'd be in 3 times a day if they had enough money. But that's the way they used to buy it. That's the way they used to shop. But the shop, when it opened, it'd be packed. And we'd close it at 1 o'clock. And myself and another girl and the woman that owned it. But we'd go home for our dinner then and we'd come back at 2 o'clock. And the first thing we'd have to do is scrub the shop, because where there's milk, you know, milk would smell a lot. Have to scrub the shop, lift the churns of milk into the cooler at the back and make up the books. All the people had books.
Oh,
They used to get a tick like.
I'll take. And then you'd pay off when you got their.
Yeah, we'd open then at 4 o'clock and to be packed then from that until 7 o'clock. But that's the way the people would be shopping. And everything was rationed as well at that time. The butter and tea and sugar as well.
Was this war years now?
Yeah,
Okay.
I went to work when I was 15.
Okay. So you're working full time since you were 15.
Yeah.
And then you know the whole thing about when you were married, you had to leave jobs. No, did that affect you at all?
Yeah, you couldn't work then when you get married. But later on years I went to work.
Yes. It's kind of funny, isn't it, that you had to drop out work and then
Yeah.
go back later on then.
Yeah. Later on I went to work for in Waterford Silver for about 6 years. And then I went to work for the Tweedies. They had a grocery shop out in Lismore Park.
All right.
I worked there for 10 years.
Okay. So you got around.
Yeah.
And what about your own working life? Where did you work?
Well, when I came back from England, I could stay on the condition I got a job. So I got a job in ACEC in the office, and I worked there for 18 months.
Well, your mum and dad said you could stay in Waterford
If I got a job. So I came home, you see, I came home at Christmas and I wouldn't go back. So I got a job. Phyllis let me stay with her. So I was in the wages in ACEC.
Okay.
And I got married then.
And then when you got married, did you have to leave?
Oh yeah, to leave the job, yeah. And I would have liked to continue, because after being in England, everyone did work. You know, in England you didn't have to leave a job when you got married, so. But I had no choice.
And that changed in England probably because of the war, did it? That they needed
Oh
women
yeah.
to work.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Most women worked then in England. Having a family didn't matter.
Yeah.
But I think childcare in England then, the people childcare was easier because you could get a friend or a neighbour, whereas now it's, you know, health and safety, it's all different.
And then did you ever go back to work then afterwards?
I did. I actually worked with Phyllis out for the treaties.
Okay.
I went out to work in the shop and the pub after my husband was out of work, and I went back to work. Then I stayed working for years.
Okay, and what about, was any other, I mean, there was Raytex out near Kilcone as well, where,
That's right, yeah.
where a lot of women worked as well, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know anyone working in Raytex now, did you?
Just Peary Perry used to work there.
No, yeah.
And what about the whole thing about the shows and all that, the tops of town and all that? Did anything get roped into that at all?
Yeah, I did in ACEC.
Okay.
Yeah, they were great, and the Waterford Crystal Show were brilliant, and the Foundry. Wasn't that fantastic, the Foundry?
Our sister's husband, Bernie Flanagan, he used to play in the tops of the town, the piano.
He'd play in the pit. You know, but no, the tops were great. Sure.
And was there any other? I mean, was there any other entertainment kind of stuff that you used to get involved in? Or?
I know a lot of people went to bingo. I never took it up, and I don't think you did either. Did you?
No, I hated it.
No, not really. No.
But I do like the bridge, I must say.
And before, just when you go way back, like, not many people got holidays out of Ireland at all in those days. I mean, even going to London was probably unusual.
Yes,
for people.
Yeah.
Well,
Phyllis always went to Tramore for a month.
All right. Did you have a place to stay in Tramore?
Oh, I used to love this house up on the terrace in Tramore. And another time we went to Woodstown because I always loved the beach. But
or would you just rent a house for?
Yeah.
Okay. And off you go.
Yeah.
And if your husband was working, would he go in and out or something, or how was that?
Oh, he never liked the beach. But then if the weather was good, apart from going out for the month, I'd bring them all into the bus. We hadn't a car, into the bus at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning, out to Tramore for the day.
And they'd have to walk into the bus.
I don't know, were they happy? But once I got to Tramore, I just loved Tramore. Even today, I think there's no place like Tramore. And when you go away now, like, and see places in Spain and everything, but like the beach out in Tramore, sure, is fantastic. Like.
If you had the weather.
Yes, if you had the weather. But we used to have the weather, though.
And then the train, sure, like everyone got on the train. I have a friend, and there was 10 in the family, and she said her mother would pay for 2 of them.
Yeah.
And they'd all be
Yeah,
put
they'd
in
be
then.
sending the children off to get on the train.
But it was a great way for people to get to the beach.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and the railway was handier. It was near in the middle, that it was on both ends of the town. People could have access to it.
There'd be so many people going out on the train on the 15th of August that there'd be loads of people going down to Railway Square just to see all the people going the 15th of August, like to Tramore.
The good crack then.
Yeah. Yeah, my mother and father always went and made us go the 15th. Now I hated the races.
And when you went out to Tramore then, would you get, the whole thing about boiling the kettle and all that kind of stuff, would you?
When I was a child, we went with my grandmother to Tramore, and there'd be just a little hut down there in Riverstown. This chap had boil the kettle and it'd make the tea for you in the teapot.
And that was the way
Yeah.
you brought out a few sandwiches or
Oh
something.
yeah, and my grandmother used to bring corned ribs in biscuit tins when we'd be going, and the sandwiches and
And
make
keep
the
you
tea.
going.
Yeah.
You'd be starving. And did you like swimming?
And I was never able to swim, but I loved the water.
All right. So what, did you just go out and splash around?
Yeah.
would you be frightened in water though? Or,
No. I
oh,
used
how
to
come you
love
never learned to swim then?
Oh, sure, I don't know. Well, I'll tell you one thing. Even though I had loads of lessons, I never learned to drive either. And I always felt it was because of when my grandmother was killed.
Oh, okay.
Even when I used to be on a bike, if I saw a lorry coming, I used to, yeah, I'd have to go on the footpath.
And there was no help then, really,
Yeah.
for people. You
Yeah.
had to get over things. You know,
there's
nowadays you
no
have
counselling,
counselling.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
no.
And because I often heard people saying that they learned to swim out in the pond in Major Cruise.
Well, they could. Yeah, we used to walk out to Major Carews, but we
Yeah.
never learned to swim.
Okay. Because that seemed to be a place where people learned the first thing
Yeah,
how to swim.
yeah. There was another black caps. Well, you couldn't swim there now, but the kids used to love going out there for the tadpoles and
Yeah.
bring out the jars, and which is all a built up area now. You know,
Yeah,
There's- even at the end of the German road, there was always a stream.
Good.
Do you remember that? There
Yeah,
was the stream. Yeah.
Which end now?
Pierce Park end.
Okay.
There was a stream there running from, say, the end of where the German houses were to right down to as far as Pierce Park. There was a stream.
Good.
But it was much, children had a lot more freedom like then. Like you could go out the country, the children could go out the country. You couldn't do that today, like really. You couldn't leave children out the country without adults, like.
Yeah, we had a lot of freedom, really, when you think of it.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing too is just about the women. I mean, the whole thing about like how girls were treated and how the boys were treated. Do you want to say anything about that? I mean, how different was it back then? In the family, like in the family.
My daughter, anyway, always says that I treated the boys different.
And mine say that too, but I don't think I did.
What you would expect the girls to do more housework and all that kind of stuff.
Not so much that, but I think I might, and I'd say Phyllis is the same, maybe waited on the boys more, and did kind of everything.
Which is a kind of traditional thing, wasn't
It is Irish
Well,
mothers
I
do
can
that.
tell you, my husband, he never changed nappies or bottle fed the children. Like different towards husbands today,
Yeah.
they get much more involved in the children.
And what about things like childbirth? Would they be there for childbirth?
Jesus, to be in the pub.
Well, I wouldn't want them there anyway.
They'd be in the
To
pub.
be in the pub.
Drown their sorrows.
What is that short saying? I remember reading on the paper one time, woman in labour, man in pub.
I don't know. I mean, do you think there's, for girls then you got a raw deal, like growing up, or would you felt like?
Well, I didn't know, but then again, I was a lot younger than any of them,
But I mean, couples today, like, it's much more 50-50, like, whereas men, years ago, they just didn't do things like husbands do today, like.
But I think in a lot of families with the boys years ago, the boys might have been a bit more looked after, as I said, waited on hand and foot, even before our generation. It's not like that now.
Yeah.
Although mine say I still wait on the boys, I don't know, when they're married.
Anything else? What anything else keeps one else?
That's something we had a second ago, and it's after going unless we covered it. Father Pat's Field.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we spoke about that.
Yeah,
We
what
used
is
to have
Father?
picnics up
You
there.
mentioned Father Pat's Field. What was it?
Yeah,
Just a
well, it
field?
was like a playground.
Okay.
It was it was before, where Peg lives?
Yes.
It would be up a bit opposite her, there was no houses there then, you see. They built those houses later on.
Yeah.
So Father Pat's field was there. And everyone used to go up there. We used to have photos of Father Pat's field. I don't know where that went. All the kids would be playing and you'd have picnic and that there, which was really a kind of a community
But
place for
what I
everyone to
did
gather.
say to you before, that on the German road, the children had the field behind our house.
Okay.
You know, that they could play soccer and everything out there.
And speaking of photographs, do you have any old photographs here?
But I don't think they'd be any, I don't know whether they'd be any good here. I mean, what kind of photos were you looking for?
Anything at all?
Babs must have had a lot of photos.
They
of
did,
when
Babs
Mary
now,
McAleese came
they'd
down
be
and that,
much
did
more into...
Oh, no, Jiman, Jerry. Jerry has all these photographs.
Yeah, Jerry Roach.
There's a photograph of Jimmy Nolan and my son, and I can't think of the third fella.
If I hold it.
Lay down the table.
I can say that.
Okay, here. Like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's Jimmy Nolan here, and that's Eamon Breslin. I can't think of the middle fella.
That's a young Jim Nolan.
Yes.
Does he know you have this picture?
It was a competition. The three of them were the best in the class.
Oh.
And it was a competition to see who would be first
Okay.
when
so
they do their exams.
can you tell me who's who now? I'm just recalling.
That's Jimmy Nolan. And that's Eamon Breslin. And
That's your son?
yeah,
Okay.
I can't remember the fella in the middle.
Sure, Jim will tell us who it is.
Yeah,
What else have you?
there's taken on the German road.
Do you know any of the kids here?
In your glasses, but
That's your
yeah.
ones.
The first chap here is Karl-Heinz Weber. And those two chaps were Welsh was their name. I don't know their first name. They're two of the McHenrys. And that was Jimmy Kelly. And that's Carl Reinl. And that's my son Derek.
And Jimmy Kelly, he's not the union guy, is he?
No,
Okay.
no. They are.
That's a great picture. And you can see the blondes come from the German road.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great. What else have we got there?
I don't know where that is. Bill paid for Johnville, but I don't know. That's him there. That chap, I think, was killed after he's one of the Milans.
Oh, was that out in their pitch?
It must be. I don't know really.
Okay.
That's only come from me. That's John Nolan, Jimmy's brother,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's Derek, my son.
And is that your house then across the road, Dan? Is that one of your houses?
Yeah, look, you can really see
Yeah,
that.
that's the German house there.
Yeah. And that's in the front of our house. That's a long time ago now.
But these are your children, is it?
That's Bill and that's Paul. That's Bernie's daughter. She died 2 years ago. And that's my sisters too. And who else? Oh,
Yeah, that's
Miriam, yeah.
my sister's
yeah.
children, yeah.
They're cousins, like.
Okay.
That's another one of the on the German road, but it's so small.
That'd be an interesting one now, fellas, with Josie and Eddie, that they worked in the glass.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's taken out in Woodstown now. That's my husband there.
No, there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And who's this chap?
that's when
Eddie.
That's me. That's my aunt and her husband. They worked in the glass
Is that you
factory.
there at the back?
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
And that, I don't know whether you'd be bothered with that.
Who are these now?
They're, that's
Jean.
Jean, Ursula and Marion, and that's their cousin Elizabeth.